At a Buddhist funeral, nobody asks the dead person to come back and explain why they left. The body is gone, the moment has passed, and eventually everyone must walk away. Yet in ordinary life, we do something very different. We keep returning to dead relationships, dead expectations, dead versions of ourselves, asking them for one more answer, one more apology, one more reason to stay. Buddhism teaches a painful truth. Sometimes your suffering continues because you are trying to receive life from something that has already ended. There comes a point when you must stop standing beside what is gone and start walking toward what is still alive. 1. Stop rushing yourself out of grief. When something important ends, people may tell you to move on, stay positive, or forget what happened, but grief does not follow anyone else's schedule. Buddhism teaches us to allow sadness to be present without immediately trying to escape it. You may be grieving a person, a relationship, broken trust, lost years, or even a future you truly believed would happen. If it mattered deeply to you, it is natural that losing it hurts. The problem becomes heavier when you start judging yourself for still feeling pain. You may think, "I should be over this by now," or "Why am I still sad?" This creates another layer of suffering. First you experience the loss, then you punish yourself for not healing fast enough. Buddhism teaches you to stop fighting your own emotions and give your heart the time it needs. Some days you may feel better, and then a song, memory, place, or photo may suddenly bring the sadness back. That does not mean you are starting over. Healing is not a straight road. You can be making progress even when the pain returns for a moment. Do not compare your healing to anyone else's. Some people recover quickly, while others need more time. Your job is not to heal fast, it is to heal honestly. Give yourself patience, let the pain slowly become lighter, and remember that moving forward does not mean forgetting what happened. It simply means allowing your life to continue. 2. Let the pain move through you, instead of becoming you. There is a big difference between saying, "I am hurting," and believing, "I am broken." Pain is something you are experiencing. It is not who you are. Buddhism teaches us to observe sadness, loneliness, anger, and fear without allowing these emotions to become our identity. Feelings come, stay for a while, and eventually change. When you are deeply hurt, it can feel like the sadness has taken over your whole life. But even during difficult days, there will be small moments when the pain becomes lighter. You may enjoy a peaceful morning, laugh at something unexpectedly, have a good conversation, or simply notice that you went several minutes without thinking about what happened. These small moments are signs that healing has already started. Do not hold on to pain because you are afraid that healing means forgetting. You can still love someone, remember what happened, and respect what the experience meant to you without suffering forever. Healing does not erase the past, it changes the way the past lives inside you. Let yourself feel the emotion when it comes, but do not build your whole life around it. The pain is passing through you, not becoming you. With time, what feels unbearable today can become something you remember without losing your peace. 3. Stop reopening a wound just because you miss what hurt you. Sometimes the reason a wound takes so long to heal is not because the pain is too strong, but because we keep returning to the thing that caused it. We reread old messages, look at old photos, check someone's profile, replay the last conversation, or imagine what we should have said differently. Each time we do this, we pull ourselves back into the same emotional place and then wonder why it still hurts so much. Buddhism teaches that attachment can make us hold on to things even after they have already ended. You may think you are holding on to the person, but sometimes you are really holding on to the hope that the past will somehow change. You hope they will come back, apologize, understand your value, or finally become the person you wanted them to be. But healing begins when you accept that yesterday cannot be rewritten. This does not mean you have to hate the person or erase every memory. It simply means you stop using the past as a place you keep visiting whenever you feel lonely. A memory can be meaningful without becoming a place where you live. You can remember the good moments without ignoring the pain that came with them. Ask yourself a simple question. Every time I go back to this memory, does it help me heal, or does it reopen the wound? If checking their profile leaves you anxious, if rereading old conversations ruins your mood, or if looking at old photos keeps you stuck for hours, then your heart may be asking you for distance, not more information. Sometimes people keep checking because they want proof that the other person regrets losing them. They want to know if they are missed, if the other person is unhappy, or if life has punished them for what they did. But your peace cannot depend on someone else's regret. Even if they regret everything, your healing is still your responsibility. And even if they never regret it, you still deserve to move forward. Buddhism teaches letting go, not because what happened was meaningless, but because holding too tightly creates more suffering. Letting go is not saying, "This never mattered." It is saying, "It mattered, it hurt, I learned from it, and I no longer want to keep hurting myself with it." There may also be moments when loneliness makes the past look better than it really was. Your mind may remember the beautiful moments and quietly forget the disrespect, confusion, disappointment, or pain. Be careful with this. Missing someone does not always mean they were good for you. Sometimes you miss the comfort, the routine, the attention, or the version of yourself you were when they were around. You are allowed to miss someone and still know that going back would not be healthy. You are allowed to love someone and still choose distance. You are allowed to remember the past and still decide that your future deserves better. Healing often begins with small boundaries. Stop checking what they are doing. Stop asking other people about them. Stop rereading messages that always leave you feeling worse. Stop creating imaginary conversations in your head where they finally say everything you wanted to hear. The more you stop feeding the attachment, the weaker its hold becomes. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. Your mind may keep wanting to go back because the familiar pain can feel safer than the unknown future. But every time you choose not to reopen the wound, you are teaching yourself that peace is more important than curiosity. Eventually, you will notice something changing. You will think about them less. Their name will not create the same reaction. The memories will still exist, but they will no longer control your entire day. That is not forgetting, that is healing. Do not keep touching a wound just to see if it still hurts. Give it space, give it silence, give it time. Some things heal not because you finally understand everything, but because you finally stop returning to the place that broke you. 4. Accept that some questions will never receive an answer. One of the hardest parts of grief is not always what happened. Sometimes the hardest part is what was never explained. You may keep asking yourself why someone changed, why they left, why they stopped caring, why they treated you badly, or why something you believed in ended so suddenly. Your mind may return to the same questions again and again because it believes that if it can finally understand everything, the pain will disappear. But life does not always give us complete explanations. Sometimes people leave without giving you the closure you wanted. Sometimes they give an explanation, but it still does not make sense. Sometimes they say one thing while their actions show something completely different. And sometimes the truth is simply that another person's mind, fears, weaknesses, desires, and choices are too complicated for you to fully understand. Buddhism teaches us that suffering grows when we demand certainty from a life that is naturally uncertain. We want everything to have a clear reason. We want every ending to come with an explanation. We want every betrayal to make sense. We want every painful event to fit neatly into a story that our mind can understand. But life does not always work that way. You may never know exactly why someone hurt you. You may never know why they chose another path. You may never know whether they regret what they did. You may never know what they were thinking during the final days of the relationship. You may never know whether things could have been different, and accepting that can feel very difficult at first. The mind does not like unfinished stories. It keeps returning to them because it wants to complete the ending. You may replay conversations and search for hidden meanings in their words. You may remember small details and wonder whether they were signs you missed. You may imagine different choices and ask yourself what would have happened if you had acted differently. This can become a painful cycle. You think you are searching for an answer, but often you are simply returning to the wound. Buddhism encourages us to notice when thinking is no longer helping us understand and has started creating more suffering. There is a difference between reflecting on the past and becoming trapped inside it. Reflection can teach you something useful. It can help you recognize patterns, understand your mistakes, or become wiser. But endless questioning often does not create wisdom. It only keeps your mind attached to something that has already happened. Sometimes there is no perfect answer that will make the pain disappear. Imagine that someone finally explains why they left. They tell you every reason, every thought, and every feeling. Would that automatically remove the sadness? Probably not. You might understand them better, but you would still have to accept the loss. You would still have to wake up the next morning and continue living. You would still have to heal. This is why closure does not always come from another person. Sometimes closure is something you create for yourself. Closure can be saying, "I may never fully understand why this happened, but I understand that it happened." That sentence is powerful because it stops the mind from fighting reality. There is a difference between understanding something and accepting that it is real. You may never understand why a person betrayed your trust, but you can accept that the trust was broken. You may never understand why someone stopped choosing you, but you can accept that they are no longer choosing you. You may never understand why a plan failed, but you can accept that the plan has changed. Acceptance does not mean that what happened was fair. It does not mean that you approve of it. It does not mean that you are no longer hurt. It simply means you stop arguing with the fact that it happened. This is one of the deepest ideas in Buddhism. Much of our suffering comes from wanting reality to be different from what it already is. We keep saying, "This should not have happened. They should not have left. They should have understood me. Life should have gone another way." These thoughts may be understandable, but they cannot change the past. Reality does not change because we resist it. The relationship is still over. The person is still gone. The mistake still happened. The years still passed. The opportunity still closed. Once you understand this, you can slowly move from asking, "Why did this happen to me?" to asking, "What can I do with my life now that it has happened?" That second question gives your power back to you. You may also need to accept that some people do not have the emotional ability to give you the kind of closure you want. Maybe they avoid difficult conversations. Maybe they do not understand themselves well enough to explain their actions. Maybe they are afraid of responsibility. Maybe they simply do not care enough to give you a satisfying answer. Waiting for that person to suddenly become emotionally mature may keep you stuck for years. Your healing should not depend on their ability to explain themselves. You can stop waiting. You can stop checking your phone for the message that will make everything clear. You can stop imagining the apology that may never come. You can stop preparing a perfect speech for a conversation that may never happen. There is freedom in realizing that you do not need another person's permission to close a chapter. You can close it yourself. This is not easy because unanswered questions often make us feel that something is unfinished. But sometimes the unfinished feeling is exactly what you have to learn to live with for a while. Eventually, it becomes less important. Think about questions you had years ago that once seemed enormous. At the time, you may have believed you needed an answer desperately, but now, perhaps you barely think about them. Time changed their importance. The same thing can happen with the questions hurting you today. One day, you may realize that the answer no longer matters as much as you once thought it did. You may understand that even if you knew exactly why everything happened, it would not change what you need to do now. You still need to care for yourself. You still need to rebuild your peace. You still need to decide what you will accept in future relationships. You still need to continue living. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes practical. Instead of spending all your energy trying to understand someone else's mind, bring your attention back to your own. Ask yourself what the experience taught you. Maybe it taught you to recognize unhealthy behavior earlier. Maybe it showed you where your boundaries were weak. Maybe it helped you understand what you truly need from people. Maybe it taught you that you can survive an ending you once thought would destroy you. These lessons belong to you. They do not require another person's explanation. And there may also be questions about yourself that you need to stop asking endlessly. You may keep thinking, why was I not enough? But another person's decision does not automatically mean you lacked value. Relationships end for many reasons. People change, needs change, circumstances change. Sometimes two people can care about each other and still be wrong for each other. Do not turn every ending into evidence that something is wrong with you. Instead of asking, why was I not enough? Ask, what can I learn about myself from this? That question is much kinder and much more useful. There is another form of grief that comes from things outside relationships. Maybe you lost a job, a dream, a friendship, a loved one, or an important opportunity. In these moments, the question may become, why did life allow this to happen? There may not be an answer that satisfies you. Buddhism does not promise that everything will happen for a reason that you can clearly understand. It teaches that suffering, change, loss, and uncertainty are part of human life. That may sound difficult, but there is also freedom in it because you no longer have to force every painful event into a perfect explanation. Some things happen, and then we decide how we will live afterward. That decision matters. You can spend years waiting for the past to explain itself, or you can begin building a future that does not need the explanation. You can choose peace without having every answer. You can forgive yourself without knowing exactly why everything happened. You can move forward while some questions remain open. This is not giving up. It is letting go of a battle your mind cannot win. There comes a point when you have to ask yourself whether the answer you are searching for is truly necessary for your healing, or whether searching for it has become another way of staying emotionally connected to what hurt you. Sometimes the question itself becomes the attachment. You keep asking why, because asking why allows you to keep thinking about the person, the event, or the life you lost. Once you stop asking, you have to face the reality that the chapter is actually ending. That can be frightening, but endings create space. When you stop searching through yesterday for answers, you finally have attention available for today. You begin noticing what is still here. Your health, your breath, your work, your family, your goals, your morning, your future. These things may have been waiting quietly while your mind was trapped inside one unanswered question. Bring your attention back. Buddhism teaches us that peace does not come from controlling every part of life. Peace often comes from releasing our demand to control what cannot be controlled. You cannot control whether someone explains themselves. You cannot control whether they apologize. You cannot control whether they regret losing you. You cannot control whether the past finally makes sense. But you can control whether you keep sacrificing today while waiting for those things. At some point, say to yourself, I have thought about this enough. I may never know everything, and I am still choosing to live. That is not weakness, that is maturity. Some questions are meant to be answered, others are meant to be released, and sometimes the moment you stop demanding an answer is the moment your heart finally begins to become quiet. 5. Do not let one ending convince you that everything good is over. When something painful ends, the mind often does something dangerous. It takes one difficult moment and uses it to predict your entire future. A relationship ends, and suddenly you believe you will never love again. Someone betrays you, and you begin thinking you will never trust anyone again. A dream falls apart, and you convince yourself that nothing good will ever happen for you. Pain can make the future look much darker than it really is, because when you are hurting, you usually see tomorrow through the emotions you are feeling today. Buddhism teaches that everything is always changing. This idea is called impermanence. At first, impermanence can sound frightening because it means that the people, situations, and moments we love cannot stay exactly the same forever. But there is another side to this teaching that is easy to forget. Painful things also change. Sadness changes, loneliness changes, confusion changes. The situation that feels unbearable today will not remain exactly the same forever. The same law of change that allowed something to end also allows something new to begin. When you are grieving, it can be difficult to believe that anything good is still ahead of you. Your mind may tell you that the best part of your life has already happened. You may think that the person you lost was your only chance at love, that the opportunity you missed was your only chance at success, or that the version of yourself you used to be was the happiest version you will ever know. But these are feelings, not facts. You do not know everything that is still coming. There are people you have not met yet who may become deeply important to you. There are places you have never visited that may someday feel like home. There are conversations you have not had, opportunities you cannot see yet, and versions of yourself that have not been created. The future is still unwritten, even when your pain tries to convince you that the story is already over. Think about your own life. There were probably moments in the past when you thought something would never get better. At that time, the problem may have felt enormous. You may have believed you would always feel the same way. Yet somehow, life continued. The emotion changed. Your understanding changed. Maybe the situation changed too. What once controlled your thoughts eventually became something you could remember without feeling the same intensity. The pain you are carrying now can change in the same way. This does not mean you should force yourself to become positive overnight. Buddhism does not ask you to pretend that everything is wonderful when it clearly is not. It simply asks you not to mistake a painful moment for a permanent reality. There is a difference between saying, "My life is painful right now," and saying, "My life will always be painful." The first statement describes what is happening. The second predicts a future you cannot know. Be careful with those predictions. When the heart is hurt, it often speaks in absolute language. It says always, never, nothing, and no one. You may think, "I will never meet someone like them again." Perhaps that is true, but maybe you are not supposed to meet someone exactly like them again. Maybe someone different will enter your life and love you in a healthier way. Maybe the next chapter is not meant to repeat the last one. You may think, "I will never have an opportunity like that again." Maybe you will not have the exact same opportunity, but another one may appear that takes your life in a direction you could not have planned. Different does not always mean worse. Sometimes what feels like the end of everything is actually the end of one specific version of your life. That distinction matters. You may have built your entire future around one person, one job, one plan, or one dream. When it disappears, it can feel as though your entire future disappeared with it. But your future was always bigger than that one plan. Life rarely moves exactly the way we expect. You can make a perfect plan and still encounter change. You can love someone deeply and still grow apart. You can work hard towards something and still have it fail. Buddhism teaches us not to build our peace on the belief that life must follow our expectations. Instead, we learn to remain open. Openness does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop telling life that happiness can only arrive in one specific form. Maybe you believed happiness had to come through one particular relationship. Maybe peace had to come through one job, one city, one person, or one achievement. When that path closes, the mind panics because it thinks happiness itself has disappeared. But happiness was never owned by one path. There may be many roads you have not noticed yet. Sometimes loss creates space for things you would never have chosen while you were still holding on to the old life. A relationship ending may force you to learn independence. Losing a job may push you toward work that suits you better. A friendship ending may teach you to choose people more carefully. A failed plan may reveal a different direction. This does not mean every painful event is secretly wonderful. Some losses are simply painful, and it is important to be honest about that. But pain and possibility can exist at the same time. Something can hurt and still lead you somewhere new. You may not see that new direction immediately. Sometimes there is a quiet period between the ending and the beginning. That period can feel empty, but emptiness is not always a sign that nothing is happening. Think about a field after harvest. For a while it can look bare. Nothing appears to be growing, but beneath the surface, the soil is preparing for another season. Your life can have seasons like that too. There may be a period when nothing feels exciting. You are no longer who you were, but you do not yet know who you are becoming. The old chapter has ended, but the new one has not fully opened. This can feel uncomfortable because the mind wants certainty. Do not rush to fill that space. Sometimes the empty space is where healing happens. It gives you time to understand what you actually want. It gives you time to recognize what you tolerated before. It gives you time to rebuild your standards, your habits, and your relationship with yourself. If you immediately run toward another person or another distraction just because you cannot tolerate the emptiness, you may repeat the same patterns. But if you allow yourself to stay still for a while, you may discover that the silence is teaching you something. You may discover that you are stronger than you thought. You may discover that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. You may discover that your worth does not disappear when someone stops choosing you. You may discover that you can create peace without waiting for another person to give it to you. These discoveries can become the foundation of your next chapter. Buddhism teaches that attachment often makes us believe happiness belongs to something outside us. We say, "I will be happy when this person stays," or "I will be peaceful when this problem disappears." But when happiness depends completely on something external, your peace becomes fragile, because everything outside you can change. This is why inner stability matters. You can still love people. You can still pursue goals. You can still build dreams. But you learn not to place your entire identity and happiness inside something that can disappear. When one thing ends, you grieve it, but you do not allow the ending to convince you that your entire life has lost meaning. Your life is larger than one chapter. You are larger than one loss. There is more inside you than the part that is hurting. Maybe right now you cannot imagine yourself being happy again. That is okay. You do not need to imagine the whole future. You only need to get through today, with a little kindness toward yourself. Then tomorrow comes, and then another day. Healing often happens so slowly that you do not notice it while it is happening. One morning you realize you slept without waking up thinking about the problem. Another day you notice that you went several hours without checking your phone. Later you hear their name and your chest does not tighten the way it used to. These small changes matter. They show you that nothing stays the same. One day, something that feels impossible to carry now may become a memory you can hold gently. Do not be afraid if the future does not look like the future you originally planned. The person you become after loss may want different things. You may become more peaceful than ambitious, more selective than available, more patient, more independent, more careful about who you trust. You may discover that the life you were chasing was not actually the life that would have made you peaceful. Sometimes grief changes your definition of happiness. Before pain, you may have thought happiness meant having everything go your way. After pain, happiness may become much simpler. a quiet morning, a healthy body, a few people you trust, work that gives you meaning, a mind that is not constantly fighting itself. That kind of happiness can be deeper because it is no longer built entirely on excitement or approval. Do not compare your new life to the life you lost every day. If you constantly ask, "Is this as good as what I had before?" you will miss what is good about what you have now. New chapters need to be experienced for what they are, not constantly measured against the past. A new friendship will not feel exactly like an old friendship. A new relationship will not have the same memories. A new dream may not create the same excitement. That does not make these things less meaningful. They are simply new. Give new things permission to be different. There may also come a time when happiness itself feels uncomfortable. After being sad for a long period, you may laugh and suddenly feel guilty. You may think, "How can I enjoy myself after what happened?" This is another place where you must be gentle with yourself. You are allowed to feel joy again. Happiness does not disrespect the person you lost or erase what you went through. If someone you loved is no longer in your life, continuing to live does not mean they meant nothing. If a relationship ended, enjoying your life again does not mean the love was fake. If you experienced something painful, smiling again does not mean the pain was unimportant. It simply means your heart is capable of holding more than one thing. You can remember and still laugh. You can miss someone and still enjoy today. You can carry grief and still experience gratitude. The heart is large enough for both. Buddhism teaches us to meet each moment as it is. When sadness comes, you acknowledge sadness. When peace comes, you acknowledge peace. When joy returns, do not push it away because you believe you are supposed to remain sad. Let joy stay too. You do not owe your pain permanent loyalty. The purpose of grieving is not to prove how deeply you cared by staying unhappy forever. It is to honor what was lost, feel what needs to be felt, and slowly make room for life again. At some point, you have to give the future a chance. You do not have to know exactly what will happen. You only have to stop deciding in advance that nothing good can happen. Leave the door open. Maybe something beautiful is coming in a form you would never have chosen. Maybe a quieter life will bring you more peace than the life you were desperately trying to protect. Maybe the ending that feels unbearable today will eventually become the moment that forced you to discover a stronger version of yourself. You do not need to believe this completely right now. Just do not close yourself to the possibility. One ending is not the end of everything. One rejection is not proof that you are unlovable. One failure is not proof that you cannot succeed. One painful chapter is not the entire story of your life. Let the chapter end. Grieve it honestly. Learn what it came to teach you. Then slowly turn the page. You do not know what is written next, and that uncertainty does not have to frighten you. It can also mean that there is still room for something new, something peaceful, and something you cannot yet imagine. The life you lost may be gone, but your life is not over. There is still more to become, more to understand, more to experience, and more to love. Do not let one ending convince you that everything good is behind you. Sometimes the most beautiful parts of your life begin after the chapter you thought you could never survive. 6. Build a new life instead of waiting for the old one to return. One of the hardest truths to accept after loss is that the old version of your life may not be coming back. The relationship may really be over. The person may really be gone. The opportunity may have closed. The friendship may have changed. The dream you built your future around may no longer be possible in the way you once imagined. For a while, the mind keeps waiting. It waits for the message, the apology, the return, the second chance, or the moment when everything somehow goes back to normal. But healing becomes much deeper when you stop asking life to restore the past and begin asking yourself what you can create from where you are now. Buddhism teaches us that change is not an accident in life. Change is part of life itself. Everything we experience is moving. Relationships change, bodies change, circumstances change, emotions change, and even the person you believe yourself to be is changing every day. Suffering grows when we demand that something temporary remain exactly as it was. We become attached not only to people and situations, but also to old versions of our own life. We say, "I just want everything to be the way it used to be." Yet sometimes life is asking us to stop looking backward and learn how to live inside what exists now. This does not mean that you should forget the past or pretend that losing something important did not matter. It means recognizing that the past can be respected without becoming the place where you continue to live. There is a difference between remembering a beautiful chapter and spending every day trying to reopen it. One allows you to carry wisdom forward, the other prevents you from seeing what is still possible. When grief is fresh, your old life can seem more beautiful than it really was. The mind remembers familiar routines, comforting conversations, certain places, and the feeling of knowing what tomorrow would look like. It can forget the confusion, problems, disappointment, or exhaustion that may also have existed. This is why we sometimes want to return to situations that were not actually peaceful. We do not always miss what was healthy. Sometimes we simply miss what was familiar. Familiarity can feel safe, even when it was hurting you. That is why beginning again can feel frightening. The old life may have been painful, but at least you understood it. You knew the people, the habits, the expectations, and the routine. A new life contains uncertainty. You do not know who you will become, who you will meet, what you will enjoy, or how everything will turn out. The mind often prefers familiar suffering over unfamiliar possibility because at least familiar suffering feels predictable. Buddhist practice asks you to become comfortable with not knowing. You do not need to see the entire new life before taking the first step toward it. You only need to begin with the next small decision. You might wake up tomorrow and decide to take a walk instead of staying in bed thinking about what happened. You might clean the room you have ignored for weeks. You might finally remove something from your surroundings that keeps pulling you backward. You might return to a hobby you abandoned, read a few pages of a meaningful book, cook a proper meal, meditate for 10 minutes, or call someone who genuinely cares about you. These actions may seem small, but they carry an important message. My life is still here, and I am choosing to participate in it. That message matters. After grief, many people wait to feel motivated before rebuilding their lives. They tell themselves, "When I feel better, I will exercise again. When I stop feeling sad, I will see friends. When I become confident again, I will start working on my goals." But sometimes the feeling comes after the action, not before it. You may not feel ready to begin, but beginning can slowly help you feel ready. You do not need a dramatic transformation. You need movement. A little movement each day can rebuild a person. Imagine someone who has spent months thinking about one painful ending. Every morning, their first thought is the person they lost. Every night, their final thought is what went wrong. Their room looks the same. Their routine has stopped. Their goals are forgotten, and everything in their environment reminds them of the life that ended. That person may believe they are waiting to heal, but perhaps healing is also waiting for them to create something new. Change one small part of the environment. Move the furniture. Open the curtains. Take a different route. Visit a new place. Start learning something. Your surroundings can teach your mind that life is moving. This is especially important because grief can make your world become very small. You begin living inside the same memories, the same thoughts, and the same questions. You stop noticing what exists outside the pain. Building a new life means slowly expanding your world again. There is still a sunrise you have not watched. There is still a book you have not read. There is still a skill you have not learned. There is still a person you have not met. There is still a version of you that does not exist yet. But you cannot meet that version of yourself while spending every day trying to become the person you were before the loss. This is something many people misunderstand about healing. They say, "I want my old self back." They want the person who laughed easily, trusted without fear, loved without hesitation, or woke up without carrying sadness. But maybe the goal is not to recover your old self exactly as you were. Maybe the goal is to become someone new. The person you were before the pain did not know what you know now. They had not learned these lessons. They did not understand their own strength in the same way. They may not have known where they needed stronger boundaries or where they had been abandoning themselves to keep someone else happy. You do not have to go backward to become whole. You can become whole in a new way. Perhaps your next version is quieter but wiser. Perhaps you become more selective with your relationships. Perhaps you learn that being alone is not something to fear. Perhaps you stop explaining yourself to everyone. Perhaps you learn how to say no without guilt. Perhaps you stop chasing people who make you question your value. Loss can change the way you live. That change does not always have to be negative. You can allow pain to teach you without allowing it to harden you. This is an important balance. After being hurt, some people decide that they will never trust anyone again. They build walls instead of boundaries. They become emotionally distant and call it strength. But Buddhism does not teach us to close the heart because the heart has suffered. It teaches wisdom, awareness, and non-attachment. You can become wiser without becoming cold. You can become careful without becoming fearful. You can love again without abandoning yourself. A new life does not mean becoming the opposite of who you were. It means taking what you learned and moving forward with greater awareness. Maybe you learned that you were giving too much while receiving very little. Maybe you learned that you ignored signs because you were afraid of being alone. Maybe you learned that you made someone else the center of your life and slowly forgot your own goals. Do not use these realizations to attack yourself. Use them to build differently. You cannot change what you did not understand before, but you can decide what you will do differently now. This is how pain becomes wisdom. There is a Buddhist idea that every moment offers a new beginning because the present moment has never existed before. You may wake up in the same room, live in the same city, and carry the same memories, but this moment is new. You have never lived this exact morning before. What will you do with it? You do not have to rebuild everything today. Maybe today you only take care of your body. Eat something healthy. Drink water. Take a shower. Walk outside. Sleep at a better time. These actions can look simple, but grief often disconnects people from basic care. When your mind is hurting, your body is often neglected. Returning to your body can become part of returning to life. Tomorrow, perhaps you work on your environment. Clean your desk. Remove reminders you are not ready to see every day. Organize your room. Create a peaceful corner where you can sit without distraction. Another day, work on your mind. Read something meaningful. Meditate. Write down what you are feeling. Spend less time consuming things that increase anxiety. Slowly, you are telling yourself that you matter enough to care for. Then begin rebuilding your direction. What did you want before this person entered your life? What dream did you stop working on? What part of yourself became smaller while you were trying to keep the relationship, situation, or old life together? Sometimes an ending reveals how much of yourself you had abandoned. You may realize that you stopped seeing friends because all your time went to one person. You stopped creating because you were always managing emotional problems. You stopped learning because you became comfortable. You stopped traveling, exercising, reading, building, or dreaming. Now you have an opportunity to return to those parts of yourself. Not because productivity will magically erase grief, but because your life needs more than pain to revolve around. Give yourself something meaningful to wake up for. It does not have to be a huge goal. Learn a language, improve your health, save money, build a creative project, read 10 pages each morning, Spend 30 minutes in meditation. Help someone. Grow something. Create structure. Purpose can become a bridge between the life that ended and the life that is beginning. And be patient, because the new life may initially feel empty compared with the old one. Old memories have emotional depth because you lived them for months or years. New experiences do not yet carry that depth. You may go somewhere new and think, this does not feel the same. Of course it does not. It is new. A new friendship may initially feel less comfortable than the person you lost. A new routine may feel strange. A new home may feel quiet. A new chapter may feel uncertain. Give it time. Do not judge the beginning of something new by comparing it to the middle of something old. Everything meaningful was unfamiliar once. The people you once could not imagine losing were strangers before you met them. The places that became home were unfamiliar the first day you arrived. The habits that became part of your identity were difficult when you first started them. Newness needs time to become meaningful. This is why patience is so important. You may not immediately love the person you are becoming. Some days you may still want the old life back. That is okay. You can miss the past without returning to it. You can experience nostalgia without treating nostalgia like instructions. A memory can say, "That was beautiful," without saying, "Go back." This distinction can protect you from many mistakes. Sometimes people return to unhealthy relationships simply because loneliness becomes uncomfortable. They mistake the pain of transition for proof that leaving was wrong. But beginning again often has a lonely stage. When your old connections disappear and new ones have not formed yet, life can feel very quiet. Do not panic in that quiet. Use it. Learn what your own company feels like without constant distraction. Sit with yourself long enough to discover what you actually enjoy. Eat alone without feeling embarrassed. Walk alone. Visit a cafe alone. Travel somewhere nearby alone. Watch the sunset without needing to send it to anyone. The more comfortable you become with your own presence, the less likely you are to accept the wrong people simply to avoid being alone. This is a powerful kind of freedom. When you no longer fear your own company, relationships become choices rather than rescue missions. You begin asking different questions. Instead of, "Will they choose me?" you ask, "Do I feel peaceful around them?" Instead of, "How do I make them stay?" you ask, "Does this connection help me become a healthier person?" Instead of, "What if I lose them?" you ask, "What am I losing in myself by trying so hard to keep them?" This is growth. The pain taught you something, and now you are using the lesson. Building a new life also means becoming careful about what you consume mentally. If every song, video, social media post, or conversation keeps pulling you back into the same emotional state, your mind never gets enough quiet to recover. Protect your attention. Your attention is part of your healing. What you look at repeatedly becomes what your mind thinks about repeatedly. If you spend hours checking someone online, your brain will continue treating that person as important in your daily life, even if they are no longer physically present. Distance is not only physical. Sometimes healing requires digital distance. You may need to unfollow, mute, archive, delete, or simply stop searching. This is not childish. It can be an act of self-respect. You do not need constant updates about a life you are trying to release. Give your mind room to form new patterns. At first, your thoughts may still return automatically. That is normal. The mind has habits just like the body. If you thought about someone every day for years, you cannot expect your brain to stop in 1 week. But every time you gently bring your attention back to the present, you are practicing freedom. You are saying, "Yes, that memory exists, but I do not have to follow it everywhere it wants to take me." This is very close to meditation. A thought comes. You notice it. You do not fight it. You do not feed it. You return, again and again. That same practice can become part of your everyday healing. When the memory appears while you are working, notice it and return to the work. When the urge to check appears, notice it and wait. When the imaginary conversation begins, notice it and come back to your breath. You are training your mind to live where your body already is, in the present. You should also allow yourself to create new memories without feeling guilty. Sometimes people hesitate to enjoy life after loss because happiness feels like betrayal. They think, if I am having fun, maybe I did not care enough. But grief is not measured by how long you remain unhappy. You do not honor love by destroying your future. You do not prove that something mattered by refusing to live afterward. When a peaceful day arrives, accept it. When you laugh, let yourself laugh. When someone kind enters your life, do not immediately push them away because someone else hurt you. When an opportunity appears, do not reject it because it was not part of your original plan. Let life surprise you. The new life may not look like the one you prayed for years ago, but it may contain a kind of peace you did not understand back then. Maybe you once wanted excitement, but now you value stability. Maybe you once wanted to be chosen by everyone, but now you value a few honest relationships. Maybe you once wanted to prove yourself, but now you want a quiet mind. Pain changes priorities. Allow your priorities to change. You do not owe your younger self the exact future they imagined. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to want different things now. This is not failure. It is awareness. There will also be moments when progress feels slow. You may look at your life and think, I am doing all these things, but I still miss what I lost. Both can be true. You can be building a new life and still grieving the old one. Healing is not a switch where yesterday disappears the moment tomorrow begins. There is overlap. For a while, part of you may be walking forward while another part continues looking back. Be patient with both parts. Eventually, the part looking forward becomes stronger. New memories begin to outnumber the old ones. New routines become normal. New people become familiar. New goals become exciting. And one day you realize you are no longer rebuilding your life. You are simply living it. That moment usually arrives quietly. There may be no dramatic announcement. You simply wake up and realize that your first thought is no longer what you lost. You notice that you have plans. You have responsibilities. You have people to call. You have things you care about. The old pain may still exist somewhere inside you, but it is no longer sitting in the center of everything. This is what healing can look like. Not forgetting, repositioning. The past moves from the center of your life to one chapter inside a much larger story. And perhaps that is what Buddhism means when it teaches us to release attachment. You are not asked to erase love, memory, or meaning. You are asked to stop demanding that something temporary remain permanent. You appreciate what was. You accept what changed. You care for what is. And you remain open to what comes next. Do not spend the next 5 years waiting for the last 5 years to return. Those years have already given you what they could give you. Take the lessons, take the memories, take the wisdom. Then use what remains of your life. There is still so much you can create. Maybe you need to rebuild your confidence. Begin. Maybe you need to rebuild your health. Begin. Maybe you need to rebuild your finances, your friendships, your faith, your purpose, or your relationship with yourself. Begin. You do not need to begin perfectly. You only need to stop waiting for permission from the past. No one is coming to hand you a certificate saying, you are officially healed. You may live again. You decide when to take the next step. Sometimes you decide while you are still sad. That is courage. You can cry in the evening and still get up in the morning. You can miss someone and still make plans. You can feel uncertain and still take care of yourself. You can be healing and building at the same time. Never underestimate the life that can grow from small, repeated choices. One morning walk becomes a routine. One book becomes a new way of thinking. One new friendship becomes a meaningful connection. 1 hour spent learning becomes a skill. 1 day of choosing yourself becomes a week. A week becomes a month becomes a year, and eventually, the life that once felt empty begins to fill with things you created deliberately. There is something beautiful about rebuilding, because the second time, you build with more awareness. You know what instability feels like, so you value peace. You know what disrespect feels like, so you value boundaries. You know what losing yourself feels like, so you protect your identity. You know what grief feels like, so you become more grateful for ordinary days. The new life may become stronger, not because the old life was worthless, but because the old life taught you what matters. So do not stand forever in front of a closed chapter, asking it to reopen. Turn around. There is still a road ahead of you. It may not be the road you expected. Walk it anyway. There are still mornings waiting for you that will feel lighter than this one. There are still parts of yourself waiting to be discovered. There are still moments of peace that you cannot imagine while you are standing inside grief. You do not need to know exactly where the road leads. You simply need to stop demanding that it lead backward. Let the old life be what it was. Honor it, learn from it, grieve it when you need to. Then slowly begin building something that belongs to the person you are becoming now. Your life does not need to return to what it was in order to become beautiful again. Sometimes healing begins when you finally stop waiting for the old life to return and give yourself permission to create a new one. 7. Begin again without demanding that you become the person you were before. After a painful ending, many people quietly wait for the day when they will finally feel like their old self again. They remember who they were before the loss, before the betrayal, before the disappointment, before the long nights of overthinking, and they want that version of themselves back. They want the same confidence, the same trust, the same energy, and the same ability to enjoy life without carrying so much inside. But sometimes healing is not about returning to the person you were before. Sometimes healing is about becoming someone new who has learned how to live with greater wisdom. Pain changes you. Loss changes you. Grief changes the way you see people, the way you understand yourself, and the way you think about life. That change can feel frightening because you may believe that something inside you has been permanently damaged. But Buddhism teaches that change is not always destruction. Change can also be transformation. The person you become after suffering may not be as innocent as the person you were before, but they may be more aware, more patient, more careful, and more peaceful. You do not have to become exactly who you were before the pain in order to be whole again. Maybe the old version of you trusted people too quickly. Maybe you ignored your own needs because you were afraid of losing someone. Maybe you stayed in situations long after they stopped being healthy because you believed leaving meant failure. Maybe you gave people too many chances, explained away behavior that hurt you, or kept sacrificing your peace to keep other people comfortable. If grief has taught you to see these things more clearly, then you are not returning to the old person. You are growing beyond them. This is one of the gifts hidden inside difficult experiences. Pain can reveal things that comfort never teaches. When life is easy, you may not notice where you are weak, where you are dependent, or where you have built your happiness on unstable things. But when something falls apart, those weaknesses become visible. You begin seeing what you were ignoring. This awareness can hurt, but it can also become the beginning of a different life. Perhaps you realize that you were making one person responsible for your happiness. Perhaps you realize that you were constantly seeking approval. Perhaps you discover that you were afraid to be alone, so you tolerated treatment that made you unhappy. Perhaps you see that you abandoned your own dreams while trying to protect someone else's presence in your life. Do not use these realizations to punish yourself. Use them to grow. It is easy to look backward and judge yourself with the knowledge you have today. You may think, how could I have stayed so long? Why did I ignore those signs? Why did I give so much? But remember that the person you were then did not know what the person you are now knows. That is why compassion toward your past self matters. You were making decisions with the awareness you had at the time. Maybe you were hoping things would improve. Maybe you loved deeply. Maybe you were afraid. Maybe you had never learned how to set boundaries. Maybe you were trying to save something that mattered to you. You can recognize your mistakes without hating the person who made them. Buddhism teaches us to observe ourselves honestly without becoming cruel. Awareness without compassion becomes another form of suffering. If every lesson from your past becomes a reason to attack yourself, then you are carrying the pain forward in a different form. Instead, say, I understand more now, so I will choose differently now. That is growth. Beginning again also means accepting that you may carry some scars. People often imagine healing as becoming completely untouched by what happened. They think that one day there will be no memory, no sadness, no fear, and no emotional reaction at all. But healing may not always look that clean. You may still remember. You may still feel something when you pass a certain place. A song may still remind you of someone. Certain dates may still feel heavy. You may still become careful when new people get close to you. None of this automatically means that you are still trapped. A scar is different from an open wound. An open wound controls your attention. A scar simply reminds you that something happened and that you survived it. You do not have to erase the scar. You only have to stop reopening the wound. There is wisdom in remembering without becoming consumed. This is why Buddhism teaches non-attachment rather than forgetting. Non-attachment does not mean you stop caring about everything. It means you learn to love and experience life without trying to possess every moment forever. You can remember someone with gratitude without needing them back. You can appreciate what a chapter gave you without wishing to repeat it. You can admit that something was beautiful and still know that it ended for a reason. These truths can exist together. The mind often wants simple answers. It wants to label everything as completely good or completely bad. If a relationship ended painfully, the mind may tell you that the entire relationship was a mistake. If you miss someone, the mind may tell you that leaving them was a mistake. But life is rarely that simple. Something can have contained love and still have been unhealthy. Someone can have given you beautiful memories and still not belong in your future. A chapter can have been meaningful and still need to end. Understanding this helps you move forward without needing to rewrite the past. You do not have to hate yesterday in order to choose tomorrow. Beginning again also requires courage, because new beginnings expose you to uncertainty again. After you have been hurt, part of you may want guarantees. You may tell yourself that you will only trust someone if you can be certain they will never leave. You may only pursue a dream if you can be sure it will work. You may avoid emotional risk because you never want to feel that kind of pain again. But life cannot give you those guarantees. No relationship comes with a promise that nothing will ever change. No plan can guarantee success. No person can promise that they will remain exactly who they are forever. Buddhism teaches us to live fully, even without certainty. This does not mean being careless. It means becoming wise enough to understand risk without allowing fear to control every decision. You can love again knowing that love may change. You can trust carefully knowing that trust can be broken. You can build something meaningful knowing that nothing lasts forever. This is not weakness. It is courage with awareness. The person you become after grief may understand this better than the person you were before. Maybe before the pain you thought strength meant never crying. Now you understand that strength can mean allowing yourself to feel everything without running away. Maybe you thought independence meant needing no one. Now you understand that healthy independence means being able to stand alone without becoming closed to love. Maybe you thought peace meant having no problems. Now you understand that peace can exist even while life remains imperfect. These changes are valuable. Do not reject them just because they came through pain. There is another reason people resist becoming someone new. A new identity can feel like letting go of the person they lost. If someone was deeply connected to your old life, changing can feel like leaving them behind. You may think, if I become happy without them, maybe what we had did not matter. Or, if I move forward, maybe I am forgetting. This belief can quietly keep you trapped. Healing does not erase love. You are allowed to carry gratitude for someone and still create a life where they are no longer present. You are allowed to remember the person you were with them while becoming someone different now. Your growth is not an insult to the past. It is proof that life continued. And life continuing is not betrayal. Imagine someone planting a tree after losing someone they loved. Years later, the tree becomes large and beautiful. Every season, new leaves appear. Would you say that the new leaves disrespect the leaves that fell before? Of course not. The tree continues growing because that is what living things do. You are allowed to do the same. New experiences do not erase old ones. New relationships do not cancel previous love. New happiness does not prove old grief was fake. Your heart can hold many chapters. Do not force yourself to stay emotionally frozen in one chapter simply because it once mattered deeply. Buddhism reminds us that clinging creates suffering. Sometimes we do not only cling to people, we cling to versions of ourselves. We keep thinking, I used to be happier, I used to be more confident, I used to be more open. But constantly comparing yourself to your old self can prevent you from noticing the strengths developing in you now. Maybe you are not as carefree as before, but perhaps you are more discerning. Maybe you trust more slowly, but perhaps you trust more wisely. Maybe you do not give everyone access to you anymore, but perhaps you finally understand boundaries. Maybe you spend more time alone, but perhaps you have learned how valuable peace can be. Do not call every change a loss. Some changes are maturity. There is also a danger in turning your pain into your entire personality. After being hurt, you may begin introducing yourself to life through what happened to you. Every new relationship is compared to the old one. Every conversation eventually returns to the betrayal. Every choice is made around avoiding the same pain. At first, this is understandable because fresh wounds dominate attention. But eventually, you have to ask yourself whether you want your identity to remain organized around something that ended. You are more than what happened to you. You had qualities before the pain. You developed qualities through the pain, and you will discover qualities after the pain. Do not allow one chapter to become your entire name. There may come a point when you need to stop saying, I am the person who was abandoned, and begin saying, I am the person who learned how to stand again. Stop saying, I am the person who was betrayed, and begin saying, I am the person who learned discernment. Stop saying, I lost everything, and begin noticing what you still have and what you are capable of building. This is not pretending the pain never happened. It is refusing to let pain write the rest of the story. Your story belongs to more than the person who hurt you. Beginning again also means allowing yourself to develop new desires. The things you wanted before may no longer fit. You may have once dreamed of a certain relationship, career, lifestyle, or future. After everything you have experienced, those dreams may change. Do not be ashamed of that. You are allowed to change your mind. Maybe you once wanted a loud, exciting life, and now you want something peaceful. Maybe you once wanted to impress people, and now you want freedom from their opinions. Maybe you once wanted many friends, and now you value a few deep relationships. Maybe you once wanted constant achievement, and now you care more about health, time, and inner peace. Grief can rearrange your priorities. It teaches you how temporary life is. It reminds you that time is limited. It shows you that many things you worried about were never as important as you believed. This can become wisdom if you listen carefully. Perhaps one reason pain entered your life was not to destroy your future, but to expose what you no longer want to waste your future on. Not every battle deserves you. Not every person deserves unlimited access to you. Not every argument deserves a response. Not every opportunity deserves your energy. Not every relationship deserves another chance. The person you are becoming may understand this deeply, and that can make your new life quieter. At first, quiet may feel strange. If you were used to emotional chaos, peace can feel boring. If you were used to constantly checking whether someone was upset with you, a healthy relationship may feel unusually calm. If you were used to fighting for attention, someone who gives it freely may feel unfamiliar. Be careful not to confuse peace with emptiness. Sometimes your nervous system becomes so familiar with uncertainty that calm feels unnatural. Give yourself time to learn a different rhythm. You do not have to recreate chaos simply because chaos feels familiar. This is part of beginning again. You begin choosing what is healthy, even before healthy feels normal. You begin choosing people who communicate clearly. You begin choosing routines that protect your mind. You begin choosing silence instead of arguments. You begin choosing distance instead of repeatedly explaining yourself. You begin choosing yourself without needing to become selfish. This new version of you may be less interested in proving things. You may no longer need everyone to understand you. You may realize that people will misunderstand you no matter how carefully you explain yourself. That realization can be freeing. You do not have to spend your life convincing people of your intentions. Let your actions speak. Let time reveal what words cannot. Protect your peace. The Buddha's path places great importance on awareness because awareness allows you to notice what is happening inside you before it controls your behavior. This awareness becomes especially important when you begin again. Old fears may appear in new situations. Someone new may take longer to reply, and suddenly your mind remembers the person who ignored you before. A friend may become quiet, and you may fear abandonment. A new opportunity may become difficult, and you may immediately assume it will fail like something in your past. Notice these reactions. Do not shame yourself for them. Your mind learned these fears through experience. Now it needs new experiences to learn something different. When someone trustworthy remains consistent, let yourself notice that. When a disagreement does not lead to abandonment, notice that. When you make a mistake and life continues, notice that. When something good happens without chaos attached to it, notice that. You are teaching your mind that the past is not happening again simply because something feels familiar. This takes practice. Healing is not only understanding something intellectually. You may know that a new person is different, but your body may still react with old fear. Be patient. Breathe. Observe. Do not let one emotional reaction make the decision for you. Beginning again means learning how to respond to the present instead of constantly reacting to the past. That is a deep form of freedom. You also need to allow yourself to be imperfect in your new life. Sometimes people become so determined not to repeat old mistakes that they become afraid of making any mistake at all. They overthink every decision. They question every feeling. They constantly ask whether they are choosing correctly. But growth does not make you perfect. You will still make mistakes. You may trust someone who disappoints you. You may choose a path that does not work. You may ignore a sign and later wish you had noticed it. This does not erase your progress. Wisdom is not the ability to avoid every painful experience. Wisdom is the ability to meet experience differently. Maybe in the past, you stayed in a bad situation for years. Next time, you recognize it in months. Later, perhaps in weeks. That is growth. Maybe before, someone's rejection destroyed your sense of worth. Now it hurts, but you remember that rejection does not define you. That is growth. Maybe before, you chased explanations for months. Now you know when to stop asking. That is growth. Healing does not make you untouchable. It makes you more capable of returning to yourself. That is one of the most beautiful changes grief can create. You learn that even if life hurts you again, you know the way back. You know how to sit with pain. You know how to protect your attention. You know how to ask for help. You know how to set boundaries. You know how to begin again. This confidence is different from believing nothing bad will ever happen. It is believing that if something painful happens, you will not abandon yourself inside it. That is real inner strength. There will be days when the old version of you returns in memory, and you miss them. You may miss how easy everything felt. Do not fight that feeling. Thank that version of yourself. They brought you this far. They loved, hoped, tried, made mistakes, and survived things they did not understand at the time. But you do not need to become them again. They were a chapter. You are still becoming. Buddhism often uses the image of a river to explain change. You may call it the same river, but the water is never exactly the same from one moment to the next. In the same way, you may have the same name, the same face, and many of the same memories, but you are constantly changing. Do not demand stillness from something that is alive. Allow yourself to change. Allow your values to deepen. Allow your relationships to become healthier. Allow your standards to rise. Allow your life to become simpler. Allow yourself to want peace more than excitement. You are not losing yourself. You are discovering another layer of yourself, and you do not need to know exactly who you are becoming before you begin. Sometimes identity is built through action. You become courageous by doing difficult things while afraid. You become peaceful by repeatedly choosing what protects your peace. You become disciplined by keeping small promises to yourself. You become independent by learning to care for your own life. You become wise by paying attention to what experience is teaching you. Do not wait until you feel like a new person. Live differently, and slowly the new person appears. Wake up and make your bed even when your mind feels heavy. Keep the promise you made to exercise. Work on the goal even if your motivation is low. Stop sending the message you know you will regret. Say no when you mean no. Leave when something repeatedly destroys your peace. Sit quietly instead of reacting immediately. These choices may seem small, but identity is often built through repeated small choices. Every time you choose differently, you are proving to yourself that the past does not have complete control over you. And there will be beautiful surprises. You may discover that the person you become after grief is someone you respect more deeply. Not because they never hurt, but because they learned how to carry pain without hurting everyone around them. Not because they stopped needing people, but because they stopped begging people to stay. Not because they became fearless, but because fear stopped making every decision. Not because they forgot the past, but because they stopped living inside it. This person may be softer in some ways and stronger in others. They may cry more honestly. They may love more carefully. They may speak less and observe more. They may value peace in ways their old self never understood. Do not rush this transformation. Just as you should not rush grief, you should not rush rebirth. There may be months when you feel between identities. You know you cannot return to who you were, but you are still unsure who you are becoming. This middle place can feel uncomfortable, but it is not empty. It is a place of formation. You are learning, you are releasing, you are choosing, you are becoming. Be patient in that space. A seed does not look like a tree while it is underground. That does not mean nothing is happening. Much of your growth may be invisible before it becomes obvious. You may be developing patience before anyone can see it. You may be learning boundaries before you have the chance to use them. You may be building self-respect quietly. You may be releasing attachment one thought at a time. Trust that these small internal changes matter. Eventually they will appear in the way you live. You will choose differently. You will speak differently. You will walk away sooner. You will forgive without returning. You will love without losing yourself. You will become comfortable saying, "This is not for me." And one day you may look back at the person who was crying, confused, and desperately trying to understand how life could continue, and feel tenderness for them. You may want to tell them you had no idea what was coming, not because everything became perfect, not because you never suffered again, but because life became larger than the pain. That is the goal. Not a perfect future, a larger life. A life where grief exists but does not occupy every room. A life where memories remain but do not control every decision. A life where you can look backward with compassion and forward with openness. You do not need to forget in order to begin. You do not need to be completely healed before living. You do not need every question answered. You do not need everyone who hurt you to apologize. You do not need the past to approve of your future. Begin anyway. Begin while some sadness remains. Begin while you are still learning how to trust. Begin while the future is uncertain. Begin with one peaceful morning. Begin with one boundary. Begin with one healthy decision. Begin with one promise to yourself that you actually keep. And then begin again tomorrow. This is one of the deepest lessons Buddhism can offer us. Every moment is another chance to release what is no longer here and meet what is here now. Yesterday cannot be entered again. Tomorrow cannot be controlled. This moment is where your life is happening. Do not miss it because you are waiting to become someone you used to be. Honor that old version of yourself. Thank them for surviving. Forgive them for what they did not know. Carry forward what was beautiful in them. Leave behind what no longer serves you. Then give yourself permission to become someone new. You are not betraying your past by growing beyond it. You are not forgetting what happened by choosing happiness. You are not disrespecting what you lost by loving life again. You are simply accepting the truth that everything changes, including you. So let yourself grieve the person you were. Let yourself heal from what changed you. And when life places another morning in front of you, do not demand that you walk into it as the person you used to be. Walk into it as the person you are becoming, a little wiser, a little more careful, a little more compassionate, a little more peaceful, and perhaps, in ways you cannot yet see, far stronger than before. You do not have to return to your old life to be happy again. You do not have to recover your old self to be whole again. Sometimes the most powerful beginning happens when you finally stop trying to go backward and allow yourself to become someone your old self could never have imagined. 8. Stop waiting to feel completely healed before you start living again. One of the biggest mistakes people make after grief is believing that life must remain on hold until every painful feeling disappears. They tell themselves, "I will start enjoying life when I finally stop missing them. I will make plans when I feel stronger. I will open my heart when I am completely healed. I will work on myself when my mind becomes peaceful again." But healing does not always happen before living begins. Very often, healing happens because you slowly begin living again. Buddhism teaches us to meet life as it exists in the present moment, not as we wish it would become before we are willing to participate in it. Right now, you may still carry sadness. You may still have questions. You may still wake up some mornings and feel the weight of what happened. None of this means that your life has to stop. You can still take care of yourself, create new memories, work towards something meaningful, spend time with good people, and experience small moments of joy while part of your heart is still recovering. You do not have to choose between grieving and living. You can do both. This is important because many people imagine healing as a finish line. They believe there will be one morning when they wake up and suddenly feel completely different. The memories will no longer hurt, the questions will disappear, the loneliness will be gone, and they will know that healing is finished. Sometimes a moment like that never comes. Healing may be much quieter. You may notice that you are sleeping better. You may notice that you can hear a certain song without crying. You may realize that an entire afternoon passed without thinking about the person you lost. You may laugh and suddenly notice that the laughter feels natural again. You may wake up one morning and realize that your first thought is no longer about what happened. These changes are small, but together they become recovery. Do not dismiss them because they do not feel dramatic. Your heart may be healing in ways you cannot yet see. There is a reason waiting for complete healing can keep you trapped. When you keep telling yourself that you cannot live until you feel better, you make happiness dependent on reaching an emotional state that you cannot force. Then every difficult day becomes evidence that you are still not ready. You wake up sad and think, I am not healed. A memory returns and you think, I am back at the beginning. You feel lonely one evening and think, nothing has changed. But one difficult moment does not erase months of progress. Healing does not mean that sadness never returns. It means sadness no longer controls everything. Think about physical healing. If someone injures their leg, there may come a stage when they begin walking again, even though the leg is not completely strong. They move carefully. They rest when necessary. They do not pretend the injury never happened, but they also do not refuse to move until every trace of discomfort disappears. Emotional healing can work in a similar way. You begin using your life again, carefully, slowly, without demanding perfection. Maybe you are not ready for a new relationship, but you are ready to reconnect with friends. Maybe you are not ready to forgive everything, but you are ready to stop thinking about it every hour. Maybe you are not ready to make a huge life decision, but you are ready to create a better morning routine. Maybe you are still grieving deeply, but you are ready to sit outside for 20 minutes and feel the sun on your face. That is enough. Do not underestimate small beginnings. Buddhism places great value on the present moment because the present is the only place where change can actually happen. The past exists as memory, the future exists as imagination, but your choices happen here. If you keep waiting for a future version of yourself to start living, you may ignore the life that is available today. This does not mean forcing yourself to be happy. There will be days when rest is what you need. There will be moments when crying is healthier than distracting yourself. There will be times when you genuinely do not have the energy to do much. Honor those moments. But be careful not to turn temporary rest into permanent withdrawal. There is a difference between giving yourself time to recover and slowly disappearing from your own life. Grief can make withdrawal feel safe. You stop answering messages because conversation feels exhausting. You stop going outside because seeing happy people feels painful. You stop doing things you once enjoyed because nothing feels the same anymore. You stop making plans because you assume you will not enjoy them. At first, this may be understandable, but if you remain there too long, your world becomes smaller and smaller. Eventually, the pain becomes the center of everything because there is nothing else competing for your attention. This is why gentle participation in life matters. You do not need to force yourself into crowded places or pretend to be cheerful. Start with what feels manageable. Go for a quiet walk. Sit somewhere peaceful. Visit someone you trust. Cook something you enjoy. Read a few pages. Watch the sky change in the evening. Take care of a plant. Clean one part of your home. Do something that reminds your mind that the world still contains experiences beyond grief. At first, you may feel nothing. Do it anyway. This does not mean ignoring your emotions. It means giving your mind new experiences to stand beside the painful ones. A grieving mind needs evidence that life is larger than the loss. Every new experience provides a little evidence. One peaceful morning, one meaningful conversation, 1 hour spent focused on something useful, one moment of laughter, one small achievement. None of these erase what happened. They simply prove that other things can still exist. That matters more than you may realize. There can also be guilt when happiness starts returning. Perhaps you lost someone deeply important. One day you laugh unexpectedly, and afterward you feel strange. You think, why am I laughing when they are gone? Or perhaps a relationship ended, and months later you start enjoying your life again. Part of you may feel that feeling better means what you had was not real. Do not confuse suffering with loyalty. Remaining miserable forever does not prove that you loved deeply. If the relationship mattered, it mattered. If the person mattered, they mattered. If the loss changed you, it changed you. You do not need to keep suffering in order to prove any of these things. Healing is not forgetting. Joy is not disrespect. Living again is not betrayal. This is especially important when grief follows the death of someone you loved. Sometimes people unconsciously believe that moving forward means leaving that person behind. They hold on to pain because pain feels like one of the last remaining connections. But love does not have to survive only through suffering. You can remember someone through gratitude. You can carry their kindness into the way you treat others. You can honor what they taught you. You can speak their name without making sadness the only emotion connected to them. Over time, memory can become softer. You may remember something funny they did and smile instead of immediately crying. Do not feel guilty for that change. Perhaps love is supposed to become gentler with time. The loss remains real, but the pain does not need to remain sharp forever. Buddhism teaches us that everything changes form. A flower appears, blossoms, fades, and returns to the earth. A season arrives and passes. A person enters our life, changes us, and one day may no longer be there. Our suffering comes partly from wanting the form to remain unchanged, but love can continue even when form changes. The relationship may no longer exist in the same way, yet what it gave you can remain. The lesson remains. The memory remains. The effect it had on you remains. You do not need to stop living in order to keep those things. Sometimes beginning to live again requires you to stop measuring every new experience against the past. You visit a new place and think, I wish they were here. You meet someone kind and compare them to someone you lost. You have a peaceful evening and remember how evenings used to feel. This is natural at first, but if every new moment has to compete with an old memory, the present never gets a fair chance. Let today be today. A new friend does not need to replace an old friend. A new relationship does not need to recreate a previous relationship. A new home does not need to feel exactly like the old one. New happiness does not need to look like old happiness. Different experiences can have their own value. You may be surprised by the kind of life that begins growing after grief. Perhaps before the loss, you needed constant activity to feel alive. Afterward, you discover that you enjoy quiet mornings. Perhaps you once needed many people around you. Now you value a smaller circle. Perhaps you once measured happiness through achievement. Now you appreciate health, peace, time, and honest relationships. Healing can change what happiness means to you. Let it. You do not need to rebuild the exact life that existed before. You can build a life that fits the person you are now. There will also be moments when you suddenly feel strong and want to make enormous changes. Be careful here too. Healing does not require you to completely reinvent yourself in 1 week. Sometimes people try to outrun grief through transformation. They change everything: their appearance, their routine, their social circle, their goals. They stay constantly busy because silence still feels painful. Some change can be healthy, but ask yourself whether you are growing or simply escaping. Buddhism teaches balance. You do not need to remain frozen in grief, but you also do not need to run from it. Move at a pace where you can still hear what your heart is telling you. There will be evenings when sadness returns. Let it come. Sit with it. Breathe. Remind yourself that you do not have to solve your whole life tonight. Feel what is present. Then tomorrow continue. This rhythm is important. Feel, rest, return. Feel, rest, return. Each time you return to life after a painful moment, you become a little more confident that sadness does not have the power to permanently stop you. This confidence is one of the greatest things healing gives you. At first, you may fear sadness because you believe that once it returns, it will consume you. Later, you begin understanding that you can survive the wave. You have survived it before. You know that crying eventually stops. You know that memories eventually loosen their grip. You know that a painful evening can be followed by a calmer morning. This knowledge creates emotional strength. You stop being afraid of every difficult feeling. You do not need to run from sadness because you know sadness passes. Buddhist meditation trains this same understanding. You sit quietly and notice sensations arise. A thought appears, an emotion appears, restlessness appears, then something changes. Nothing stays exactly the same. When you observe this often enough, you begin understanding it beyond meditation. You realize, this feeling is here, but it is moving. That sentence can help you during grief. Instead of saying, I will always feel like this, say, this is what I am feeling right now. Right now is different from forever. A difficult moment does not deserve control over your entire future. You may also need to stop looking for signs that you are completely healed. Constantly checking your emotional state can become another kind of attachment. You wake up and ask, do I still miss them? You see a photo and test yourself. You mention their name and notice whether your chest tightens. You keep measuring your recovery. This can make healing feel like an examination you are always taking. Stop testing yourself. Live. Let healing reveal itself naturally. You do not need to know exactly how healed you are today. What matters more is whether you are treating yourself with care and moving in a healthy direction. Some days will be stronger, some will be softer. That variation is human. You can also stop demanding that everyone around you understand your healing process. Some people may think you are taking too long. Others may think you moved forward too quickly. Someone may say, you seem fine now. Another person may say, you are still thinking about that. Their opinions cannot measure your inner world. You know what you have carried. You know what progress has required. You do not need to perform grief in a way that makes sense to other people. You also do not need to perform happiness. If you are having a difficult day, you can admit it. If you are having a beautiful day, enjoy it. Both belong to the process. This is freedom, not forcing yourself to feel what you believe you are supposed to feel. Another important part of living again is allowing yourself to become curious about the future. Grief makes the mind look backward. It asks, what happened? Why did it happen? What could I have done differently? Healing slowly turns the mind forward. What would I like to learn? Where would I like to go? What kind of person do I want to become? What would make my days more peaceful? What deserves my attention now? Notice the difference. The first set of questions is about something you cannot change. The second set contains choices. You do not need to stop remembering the past, but you need questions that lead somewhere new. Give yourself something to look forward to, even if it is small. Plan a quiet morning somewhere beautiful. Choose a book you want to finish. Plan to visit someone you care about. Start saving for something meaningful. Learn something you have always been curious about. Create a small project. The goal is not to keep yourself so busy that you cannot feel. The goal is to remind yourself that there is still a future. When grief becomes heavy, tomorrow can feel empty. Give tomorrow something. It does not have to be exciting. Sometimes simply knowing that you will wake up, make tea, take a walk, and read for 20 minutes is enough to create structure. Structure can be very helpful during healing because grief often makes time feel shapeless. Days blend together. Sleep becomes irregular. Meals become inconsistent. Motivation disappears. A gentle routine can hold you when motivation cannot. Wake up around the same time. Open the curtains. Drink water. Move your body. Eat, work, rest. Spend some time without your phone, sleep. These simple actions may seem unrelated to grief, but they tell your body that life still has rhythm. Your mind and body are connected. When the body is constantly exhausted, underfed, overstimulated, and isolated, emotional pain often becomes harder to carry. Care for the body that is carrying your grief. You do not have to love your life every day. Sometimes simply caring for it is enough. There will come a stage when you begin wanting things again. Pay attention to this. Desire returning can be a sign of life returning. Perhaps you suddenly want to travel somewhere. Maybe you want to change your room. Maybe you become interested in something you stopped caring about. Maybe you feel excited about work. Maybe you start imagining a future relationship without immediately feeling guilty. Let those desires exist. Do not shut them down because you think you are supposed to remain in grief longer. There is no reward for suffering beyond what is necessary. When your heart reaches toward life, let it. You may still have fear. That is normal. After loss, new beginnings can feel dangerous because you now understand that things can end. Before heartbreak, you may have believed that love guarantees permanence. Before failure, you may have believed effort guarantees success. Before grief, you may have believed certain people would always be there. Now you know otherwise. This awareness can make you cautious, but caution does not need to become paralysis. Buddhism does not teach us to avoid attachment by avoiding life. It teaches us to participate without demanding permanence. Love without believing that you can own another person forever. Enjoy without demanding that the moment stay. Build without believing nothing can change. Care deeply while remembering that life is uncertain. This may sound frightening, but it can actually make life more precious. When you know something is temporary, you begin paying attention. You stop assuming there will always be another conversation. You become more present with people. You appreciate ordinary moments. You say what matters. You forgive what does not need to be carried. Impermanence does not only teach us how to lose, it teaches us how to appreciate. Let grief teach you that. Let the ending remind you to be present for what is still here. Look around your life. Who is still here? What is still working? What part of your body is still carrying you through each day? What opportunities are still available? What ordinary blessings have become invisible because your attention has been consumed by what disappeared? This is not about forcing gratitude to erase grief. You can be grateful and sad at the same time. You can miss one person while loving the people who remain. You can mourn one lost opportunity while using another. Life is large enough to contain both. This is why you do not need to wait for pain to disappear before appreciating anything. You can appreciate through pain. You can love through pain. You can grow through pain. Eventually, you may even become grateful for parts of yourself that emerged because of what happened. Not grateful that you were hurt. Not grateful for betrayal or loss, but grateful that you discovered your own strength. You discovered that you could survive nights you thought would break you. You discovered that you could be alone without disappearing. You discovered that you could lose something important and still wake up the next morning. You discovered that you could rebuild. That knowledge stays with you. It changes the way you face future problems. You stop believing that every ending will destroy you because you have already watched yourself survive one. That does not make you invincible. It makes you grounded. You understand that pain is part of life, but so is recovery. Loss exists, but so does renewal. Endings exist, but so do beginnings, and sometimes they exist at the same time. You may be grieving one part of your life, while another part is quietly beginning. Do not miss the beginning, because you are staring only at the ending. Maybe you are losing one relationship while rebuilding your relationship with yourself. Maybe one dream failed while another interest is appearing. Maybe one version of your life ended while a healthier version is slowly being created. Pay attention to what is being born too. Grief naturally teaches you to notice what disappeared. Healing teaches you to notice what remains and what is beginning. This shift happens slowly. Do not force it. Simply leave room for it. One day, you may realize that you are no longer asking, "When will I finally heal?" You are too busy living. You have responsibilities again, people you care about, plans, interests, peaceful routines, goals, moments that belong to the present instead of the past. The memory may still visit you, but now it visits a life that has become larger. That is powerful. The goal is not to make the memory disappear. The goal is to build a life so full of presence, meaning, and awareness that the memory no longer controls the entire landscape. Imagine grief as one room inside a large house. At first, perhaps it feels as though the room is the entire house. Everything happens there. Every thought returns there. Over time, you begin opening other rooms. Friendship, purpose, health, creativity, peace, faith, curiosity, love. Eventually, grief remains part of the house, but it is no longer the only room you know. This is what living again can become. You are not destroying the room, you are expanding the house. And this expansion does not require complete healing first. It is part of healing. So stop waiting for the perfect emotional day when you finally feel ready to live. Readiness may arrive after you begin. Take the walk while your heart is still heavy. Make the plan while you are still uncertain. Care for your body while your mind is still healing. Laugh when laughter comes. Rest when sadness returns. Love the people who remain. Notice the morning. Notice your breath. Notice that despite everything, you are still here. That matters. Your life has not asked you to forget. It is simply asking you not to abandon it. You have already given enough days to what ended. You do not need to give away every day that comes next. There is no disrespect in turning toward life. There is no weakness in wanting joy again. There is no betrayal in becoming interested in tomorrow. Let the past have its place without giving it every place. Let sadness come without handing it every hour. Let memory speak without allowing it to make every decision. And when something beautiful appears, even something small, do not push it away because you believe you are not healed enough to receive it. Receive it. A peaceful meal, a kind conversation, a quiet afternoon, a new friendship, a moment of laughter. A new dream. These are not interruptions to your healing, they may be part of it. Buddhism teaches us that this moment is already changing as we live it. Nothing asks for our permission before it passes. So do not spend all of today waiting for the day when you will finally feel ready to have a life again. This day is part of your life too. Even this imperfect day, even this grieving version of you, even this unfinished healing. You are allowed to live inside the unfinishedness. You are allowed to move forward without feeling completely certain. You are allowed to begin before the pain has completely disappeared. Healing and living do not stand on opposite sides of a door. They walk together. Some days healing leads. Some days living leads. Keep walking anyway. Eventually, you may look back and realize that you did not heal first and then return to life. You healed because, little by little, you returned to life. You opened the curtains, you answered the call, you took the walk, you made the plan, you laughed again, you trusted carefully, you tried again, you allowed something new to matter. And somewhere between all those small choices, the pain stopped being the center of your world. So do not wait until you become perfectly healed. There may be no perfect moment. Begin with the heart you have today. Carry the sadness gently. Carry the memories gently. And carry yourself forward. Your life does not need a completely healed version of you before it can become meaningful again. It only needs you to stop abandoning the present while waiting for the pain to disappear. Let yourself grieve. Let yourself rest. Let yourself heal. But also, when life reaches toward you again, let yourself reach back. There will be moments in life when something ends before your heart is ready to accept it. A person leaves, a relationship changes, a dream falls apart, trust is broken, or life simply moves in a direction you never expected. In those moments, you may feel as if something inside you has stopped moving while the rest of the world continues. People keep working, laughing, making plans, and living normally, while you are quietly carrying something they cannot see. Buddhism does not ask you to pretend that pain is small. It asks you to see pain clearly, hold it with awareness, and understand that even the deepest grief is not permanent. You do not have to hurry through what hurt you. You do not have to prove your strength by acting as if nothing happened. You do not have to smile before you are ready, forgive before you understand what you feel, or move forward according to someone else's timeline. There is no prize for healing quickly. There is only the quiet work of being honest with yourself and allowing your heart enough space to process what it has lost. Let yourself grieve. If you need to cry, cry. If you need silence, allow silence. If a memory returns, notice it without immediately fighting it. If you wake up one morning feeling stronger and the next morning feel sad again, do not call yourself weak. Healing can move forward and backward in the same week. Some memories take longer to soften because they were connected to something deeply meaningful. But while you allow yourself to grieve, remember something equally important. Grief is something you are experiencing. It is not your entire identity. You are still here beneath the sadness. There is still a part of you capable of curiosity, love, peace, courage, and beginning again. Maybe those parts feel very quiet right now, but quiet does not mean gone. A difficult season can cover parts of you without destroying them. Slowly, as the pain becomes lighter, those parts begin returning. This is why you must be careful not to build your whole identity around what happened. You may have been abandoned, but you are more than the person who was abandoned. You may have been betrayed, but you are more than the betrayal. You may have lost someone, but you are more than your grief. You may have made mistakes, but you are more than your worst decision. Do not give one painful chapter permission to name your entire life. Let the chapter be what it was. Some chapters are beautiful, some are confusing, some teach through love, others teach through loss. You do not need to pretend that every painful thing happened for some wonderful reason. Sometimes pain is simply pain. Sometimes people hurt us. Sometimes life is unfair. Sometimes something meaningful ends, and there is no perfect explanation. But even when you cannot change what happened, you can decide what you will carry from it. Carry the lesson instead of the punishment. Carry wisdom instead of endless resentment. Carry stronger boundaries instead of permanent fear. Carry gratitude for what was good without demanding that it return. Carry compassion for the person you were while you were trying to survive something you did not fully understand. This is where healing begins becoming transformation. You start realizing that you do not need the past to change before you can have peace. You do not need every question answered. You do not need every person who hurt you to apologize. You do not need someone to finally understand your value before you believe in it yourself. There may be questions you never answer. Why did they change? Why did they leave? Why did life take this direction? Why did something you loved so deeply fail? At some point, you may realize that answering those questions is no longer necessary for your future. The answer may explain the past, but it cannot live tomorrow for you. There comes a time when peace becomes more valuable than explanation. You say, "I may never understand everything, but I understand enough to continue." That is not giving up. That is release. Buddhism teaches that clinging creates suffering because we try to hold what life has already changed. We hold old conversations, old promises, old versions of people, and old versions of ourselves. We keep returning mentally to yesterday as though enough thinking might somehow reopen it. But yesterday does not need to reopen for your life to become meaningful again. Let what has passed remain where it belongs. You can visit the memory without moving back into it. You can remember someone without needing them to return. You can acknowledge that a chapter mattered deeply without believing it was supposed to last forever. This is one of the most difficult forms of acceptance because the heart often confuses letting go with giving up. But letting go does not mean something was worthless. Sometimes you let go precisely because you have accepted what it meant and understood that forcing it to remain will only create more suffering. You may always remember certain people. You may always remember a certain year, place, conversation, or goodbye. That is okay. Healing is not memory loss. Healing is when memory stops controlling the present. One day you may remember something that once made you cry immediately, and you will simply breathe. Maybe there will still be sadness, but there will also be space around the sadness. That space is healing. Eventually, you begin realizing that the future still exists. This realization may come slowly. At first, you may only be able to think about tomorrow morning. That is enough. Make tomorrow morning gentle. Wake up, open the curtains, drink water, step outside. Take care of the body that has carried you through all of this. Then perhaps you begin thinking about next week. Maybe you make one plan, then next month. Maybe you begin working towards something. Slowly, your mind starts looking forward again. Do not underestimate this change. Grief makes the mind live backward. Healing teaches it to return to the present and eventually become curious about the future. What could your life become now? Not the life you planned before everything changed, the life that can be created from where you actually stand today. Maybe you become someone who values peace more deeply. Maybe you choose relationships differently. Maybe you stop chasing people who are uncertain about you. Maybe you learn to enjoy your own company. Maybe you become more careful with your time, because grief taught you how temporary everything is. Maybe you finally begin something you kept postponing, because you now understand that life does not wait forever. This is what beginning again can look like. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes beginning again is simply answering a message after weeks of isolation. Sometimes it is cleaning your room. Sometimes it is laughing without immediately feeling guilty. Sometimes it is making plans without wondering whether the person you lost would have been part of them. Sometimes it is looking in the mirror and realizing that even though you are not the person you used to be, you are starting to recognize the person you are becoming. Do not demand that this new person look exactly like your old self. Pain changes people, but change does not have to mean damage. Perhaps you are quieter now. Perhaps you trust more carefully. Perhaps you notice people's actions instead of believing every promise. Perhaps you protect your energy more seriously. Perhaps you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. These changes may feel unfamiliar, but some of them may be wisdom. You do not need to return to innocence. You can move forward with awareness. And be careful not to let awareness become fear. After being hurt, the heart can begin protecting itself so strongly that nothing is allowed to enter again. You tell yourself you will never trust anyone, never love deeply, never depend on anyone, and never take another emotional risk. But a completely closed heart may avoid heartbreak while also avoiding connection. Buddhism does not ask you to become cold, it asks you to become awake. There is a difference. You can trust slowly, you can observe carefully, you can love without abandoning yourself. You can care deeply while understanding that nothing can be guaranteed forever. This is mature love. It does not demand permanence in order to appreciate presence. You can say, I know this moment will change someday, and that is why I will be fully here for it now. That is the gift hidden inside impermanence. Because everything changes, everything becomes precious. A conversation matters because it will not last forever. A morning matters because you will never live this exact morning again. A person matters because none of us remain unchanged forever. Your own life matters for the same reason. Do not keep postponing it. Do not wait until you are perfectly healed to participate again. There may never be a morning when every emotional scar disappears. You may carry some tenderness for the rest of your life. That does not prevent you from being happy. A scar can exist beside joy. Memory can exist beside peace. Grief can exist beside gratitude. Human beings are capable of holding more than one truth at a time. You can miss someone and still love your current life. You can regret something and still forgive yourself. You can wish one chapter had ended differently and still be grateful for where you are now. You can carry the past without allowing it to become a weight around your future. This balance is important. Do not force yourself to choose between remembering and moving forward. You can do both. And as you move forward, stop punishing yourself for everything you could not control. You were never responsible for saving every relationship. You were never responsible for changing another person's character. You were never responsible for knowing the future. You may have made mistakes, and where there is something to learn, learn it honestly. But do not turn regret into a life sentence. The person you were then did not have all the understanding you have now. Forgive them for that. You can say, "I wish I had known better, and now I do." Then let that knowledge improve the way you live. If you regret not speaking more kindly, speak more kindly now. If you regret ignoring your needs, respect them now. If you regret staying too long somewhere unhealthy, learn how to leave sooner. If you regret wasting time, become more present with the time you still have. This is how regret becomes wisdom. You cannot repair yesterday by suffering today, but you can honor yesterday by becoming wiser tomorrow. There is something deeply peaceful about finally understanding this. You stop seeing your past only as a collection of mistakes. You begin seeing it as a teacher. Some lessons were gentle, some were painful, but now you know things you did not know before. Use them. Do not keep asking yourself why you had to learn through pain. Sometimes that question has no answer. Simply make sure the lesson is not wasted. Become the person who knows how to care for their peace. Become the person who can say no. Become the person who does not chase explanations forever. Become the person who understands that losing someone does not mean losing yourself. Become the person who can sit alone without believing they have been abandoned by life. And when happiness begins returning, let it return. Do not push it away. There may come a morning when the sun feels warm again. Enjoy it. There may come a conversation that makes you laugh in a way you have not laughed for months. Let yourself laugh. There may come a person who treats you gently, and part of you may become afraid because kindness feels unfamiliar after pain. Do not immediately assume that every new person will repeat the old story. Stay aware, but stay open. There may come an opportunity that excites you again. Take it seriously. The return of interest, laughter, curiosity, and hope are not signs that your grief was shallow. They are signs that your life is growing around the grief. Let it grow. You do not owe sadness permanent loyalty. The fact that something mattered does not mean you must remain unhappy forever to prove it. If love was real, it was real. If loss hurt, it hurt. Nothing about your future happiness can erase those truths. One of the most beautiful stages of healing comes when you can look back without wanting to return. You can appreciate what happened and still know you would not choose it again. You can understand why you loved someone while understanding why the relationship could not continue. You can remember who you were without wishing to become that exact person again. This is acceptance becoming wisdom. And eventually, even your grief may teach you gratitude. Not gratitude that you were hurt, but gratitude that you survived. Gratitude that you learned you could continue after something you thought would destroy you. Gratitude that you discovered which people truly remained. Gratitude that you became more conscious of your time. Gratitude that you stopped taking ordinary peace for granted. There is something about grief that can make a simple day feel precious. Before loss, a quiet morning might have seemed ordinary, After loss, peace itself can feel extraordinary. You understand that a healthy body, a calm mind, honest people, enough food, a safe place to sleep, and a little time to yourself are not small things. Perhaps this is part of what suffering can teach when we allow it to deepen rather than harden us. It can return us to what matters. You stop chasing things that once seemed important only because other people valued them. You become less interested in meaningless approval. You become less willing to waste years trying to convince people to love you properly. You begin choosing a quieter kind of happiness. This is not losing ambition. It is gaining perspective, and from that perspective, you can begin again. Not desperately, not trying to erase what happened, not pretending you have become someone who can never be hurt again. You begin as a human being who now understands that life contains both beauty and loss. You begin with your eyes open. Maybe this time you love yourself enough not to disappear inside another person. Maybe this time you listen when your mind tells you something feels wrong. Maybe this time you leave space for your own goals. Maybe this time you stop confusing chaos with passion. Maybe this time you understand that peace is not boring. Maybe this time you choose people who do not make you question whether you matter. That is what healing can give you. Not immunity from pain, better choices after pain, and even then, life will still surprise you. You will still lose things, people will still change, plans will still fail. Nothing about healing makes you exempt from being human, but you will know something important now. You know you can return to yourself. You know that sadness can visit without staying forever. You know that endings can hurt without ending you. You know that you can rebuild. This knowledge creates a quiet kind of courage. You no longer need life to promise that nothing painful will happen. You begin trusting yourself to meet whatever happens. That is a much stronger form of security. Not, nothing bad will ever happen to me, but if something painful happens, I will not abandon myself. Hold on to that, because one day, another chapter will begin. You may not recognize it immediately. It might begin with something small, a conversation, a decision, a different morning routine, a new place, a moment when you finally stop checking the past, a day when you realize you are excited about something again. That may be the beginning. Do not demand fireworks. Some of the most important beginnings are quiet. They begin when nobody is watching. They begin when you make one decision differently. They begin when you choose peace instead of returning to familiar pain. They begin when you stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to live. And when that beginning comes, accept it. You do not need to ask whether you have suffered long enough. There is no required amount of pain. You do not need to ask whether everyone else understands. They do not need to. Your life belongs to you. So let yourself grieve what deserves grief. Let yourself feel what needs to be felt. Let yourself rest when the heart becomes tired. But do not mistake rest for the end of your journey. When the tears become quieter, listen for life. Life may already be calling you back, through sunlight entering your room, through someone who still loves you, through a goal you forgot, through your own body asking to be cared for, through a small curiosity about tomorrow. Follow that, slowly. You do not need to run, just stop refusing to move. Take one step, then another. And if you become sad again, sit down for a while, then continue. This is healing, not never falling. Returning, not never remembering. Returning, not never hurting. Returning, again and again. Returning to this moment, to your breath, to your life, and eventually to yourself. One day you may look back at this painful season and barely recognize the person who believed they would never recover. Be gentle with that person. They were doing the best they could while carrying something heavy. Thank them for surviving long enough for you to become who you are now. And then look forward. There is no need to know the entire road. You only need to know that the road continues. The chapter ended. The book did not. The person left. You remained. The dream changed. You can dream again. The heart broke. It can still love. The tears came. They can also dry. The past mattered. The future matters too. So let yourself grieve. Let yourself heal. Let yourself forgive what you cannot change. Let yourself release what no longer belongs in your hands. Let yourself become different. Let yourself laugh again without guilt. Let yourself trust carefully. Let yourself love wisely. Let yourself discover peace that does not depend on anyone staying forever. And when you finally feel the smallest desire to begin again, do not tell yourself you are not ready. Beginning again does not require you to have no pain. It only requires you to believe that pain does not deserve the rest of your life. You have carried yesterday far enough. Now carry the wisdom, carry the love, carry the lessons, and leave the suffering that no longer needs to follow you. This moment is still yours. This life is still yours. There are still mornings ahead of you. There are still people to love, places to see, things to learn, peaceful moments to experience, and parts of yourself you have not yet met. Do not let one ending take all of that from you. Bow gently to what has passed. Thank it for what it gave you. Forgive it for what it could not give you. Then turn toward what remains. Let yourself grieve. Let yourself heal. Let it hurt when it hurts. Let it pass when it is ready to pass. And most importantly, when life opens another door in front of you, let yourself begin again.